Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you are today. Welcome to today's webinar, 7 tips to update your intranet with everyone's favorite intranet oracle, Sue Hanley. Sue, welcome.
Thank you.
I just came up with that. I thought that was pretty good. I think intranet oracle is probably a pretty good description here.
Sure.
Sure. So we got a lot to get through today. I've only got 45 minutes as well, so lots to get through. So let's get rocking and rolling here for some introductions before we turn it over to Sue. So welcome again to another Orchestry webinar in our series. We have done a lot over this year. There's plenty more to come as well. My name is Michael Pisarek. I'm one of the founders and the CEO here at Orchestry. Again, super pleased to have you here. If you haven't been in an Orchestry webinar before, a little bit different. We try to run them a little bit different than the typical webinar. We're trying to make it as interactive as possible, asks lots of questions, and of course, we try to get the best in the world of what they do to come and present with us. And that is why Susan Hanley is here today. Sue, I'll let you maybe talk a little bit about yourself. And like I like to ask everyone at the end, your favorite food as well.
Want me to say my favorite food or at the very end?
Well, you can say it now, but do a bit of an intro, Sue, and then talk about your favorite food as well.
Yeah, so my name is Sue Hanley, and here's my short intro. I make intranets for a living. That's primarily what I do. I'm all in the Microsoft platform all the time. I'm a Microsoft MVP, specializing in stuff built on SharePoint. How's that? I care a lot about practical things, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. Yeah, so that's me. Normally I live in Bethesda, Maryland, but I also have a home in the Valley in California because that's where 2 of my 3 grandchildren live. So I go back and forth. I spend a lot of time on airplanes.
Awesome. And then the most important thing, Sue, favorite food.
This is going to be really boring, but my desert island food would be cottage cheese.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm
Cottage
not
cheese.
really exotic.
Like cottage cheese with jam on it to make it sweet, or cottage cheese with salt and pepper, or just plain?
Nope. I have been a cottage cheese fan since before TikTok made it a craze. And so that is my thing.
There we
What
go.
can
I
I say?
like it. I like cottage cheese. I don't know why it gets a bad rap. It's good for you, full of protein, low calorie. It's good.
It's coming back into vogue, but it was hip when I was a kid. And then no one ate, no one ate it except your grandmother. Now I'm a grandmother, so I guess I can eat it, but now it's super cool. So the kids discovered it.
Okay, so cottage cheese is the new avocado or the new.
Exactly.
There we go. All right. A little bit about Orchestry. We are a platform for Microsoft 365. We help you get your content in order. We help you secure everything. We really can, again, help you kind of manage the end-to-end lifecycle of content within Microsoft 365. I'm not going to do a sales pitch for you here at the moment. If you are interested in getting more of an understanding of our wonderful platform, feel free to get in touch with us as well. Now, for this webinar, again, it is on Teams, which means you can interact. Feel free to ask questions within the chat. First question I'm going to ask for everyone is, where is everyone joining us from? If you just want to put a brief note within the chat here, we can get this started. As we go through this webinar, again, we try to make these as interactive as possible. So please feel free to ask as many questions as you like. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but me and Sue will definitely try. I'll try to filter through the questions as well. Please do not be upset if we don't get to all of yours or one of your questions is missed. But lots of people joining us from all over the world. All right. So I'll hand it over to you here.
Yeah, and I see someone who lived in Bethesda and someone from Baltimore. So neighbors, former neighbors.
Yeah,
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to try and share my screen. Let me know if you see it.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Hopefully do. Excellent. All right. So today I'm going to try to squeeze in as many possible tips as I possibly can. Really, I'm going to focus on 7 things you can do to make your intranet sort of take advantage of all the latest and greatest things in Microsoft 365. And if I had more time, I'd give you more tips. So there's just so many things to think about. So I've really tried to pare it down so we can get it in to 45 or 50 minutes. And these are, for me, kind of the most important things to think about. So this week is build, and everything is all about Copilot. You may have heard of this. Copilot, 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 Copilot. So now I've said it 3 times. And just so you know, when you say the word Copilot, an angel gets its wings. So this week, we're getting a lot of angels with wings because it is all about Copilot. And so you may be thinking, oh gosh, well, now that we have Copilot, am I even going to need an intranet anymore? Is Copilot going to eat my intranet for lunch? And the answer is, you still need people. There is no AI without qualified content that is current, up to date, well governed, well managed, appropriately permissioned. Michael, you may know of a tool that helps with that. I mean, you can't have quality answers generated from Copilot grounded in even your own content if your own content is not carefully managed. So I'm sort of, my take on all of this stuff is that the intranet of the future may not look like it does today, but it still needs content managed in containers, I guess you're going to call it, managed by people, because really people are going to be the only ones who can tell you, is this content current and up to date? And as I like to tell my children, just because it's old doesn't mean it's not valuable, but it also doesn't mean it's completely current. And it may mean we need humans to look at that content and check in and see if it's right. And so when I'm thinking about sort of how am I going to transform my intranet, give it a makeover for the future, I want to actually take a step back first and say, for whom am I creating this intranet, and why should they care? And I think there's some stakeholders that we should check in with before we start doing a revamp. And the first one I want to make sure we think about is the organization itself. Because if we're not working on something that is critical to the business organization, we're kind of working on a sideshow. And nobody wants to really be working on a sideshow project. And so I think you want to try and understand, what are the big rocks for your organization? And how can you align your intranet transformation to what the organization is really focused on? Great intranets drive business value. And if we aren't aware of what are the critical KPIs for business value, that's the, do not pass go, do not collect $200 moment. You got to figure that out before you can move forward. So understand what's important to the organization, and then start talking to content providers and consumers. I will never, ever, ever ask anyone, what do you want on the intranet? Because when you ask that question, you're putting people in a box, and they are thinking about one of 2 things. Ugh, this is what I hate. Or, well, what can I have? Well, that's not the right question for me. The question is, what do you need? What information do you need to do your job? What kind of processes do you produce as a content producer? And for that reason, if you've ever heard me talk about this before, you know that there is a word that I have banned from my vocabulary. I do not use the word requirement, because if something is a requirement, you must do it. And if you hear a requirement from a user and then you say, oh, sure, we can do that in our SharePoint world, but it's probably going to take about $500,000 of customization, all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, that's not really what I meant. What we really should be asking is about outcomes. Governance is the next slide. Outcomes. What do you want to accomplish? What is the business goal? And then I can derive the requirements from that outcome. But if I understand what you're trying to accomplish, I can probably get there in a way that doesn't require a massive amount of customization. Because again, the framework for asking is in that, here's what I know I can possibly do today, not what is the potential and capabilities that maybe I'm not aware of. And we're working in the cloud, and the cloud platforms are changing all the time, which means you need to keep up with what new capabilities are available, what new knobs and dials you can turn, and what new web parts are available to you to tell stories, to basically achieve those outcome goals without customization. But until you understand what the outcome goal is, you can't really tell, well, where might I need to spend my customization dollars?
The other thing, so just to mention, having done a few intranets as well, if you have really clearly defined outcomes, it's much easier to go and get this intranet project funded. That's the other thing that we found, right? Because if you just go in with a bunch of requirements and saying we need
Right.
$500,000, it's very different than saying, hey, here are the tangible outcomes.
Well, that's
and
why you start
improvements
with
and
the big
things.
rocks. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, if you don't know what they are, you can't address how your outcomes are going to help you achieve them. And so, look, as an internet platform owner, I should be willing to take on an organizational KPI and influence it. Because if I can't do something towards helping the org achieve their objectives, why should you fund my project? I mean, why should you fund anything related to the intranet if it's not going to help support your goals? And it isn't the goal, by the way, the outcome goal is not saving 15 minutes per person per day. I want a tangible business related outcome goal, not a goal that I will just call you got to be kidding me. No, we need a goal that's related to the business, because business projects get funded. Projects, as you said, with tangible outcomes get real funding, and that's really what we need. Now, the second thing I think you want to think about, and maybe even the first thing you want to think about, is governance. Because what I see a lot is that many organizations, the most common thing I hear when I am asking about outcomes, people will definitely complain about their intranet. And the number one thing they complain about is the quality of search outcomes. They basically tell me that search doesn't work. And what they actually mean is that search is finding outdated content that is not relevant to their question. It's not that search is bad, it's that they have no governance plan that is being followed. And so governance is really about balancing the risks that you are willing to take as an organization, sort of acceptable and managed risks, with what the business needs to be able to accomplish. And it's also about preparing for Copilot, because if you have all your permissions unmanaged, if you have content that is ungoverned, meaning it is not current or not accurate, the risk of having the Copilot hallucinates, Copilot doesn't do anything valuable for me answers is exponentially increased. So you need to secure what needs to be secured. You need to update what needs to be updated. And you need to think about these governance decisions before you provision content, sites, files, libraries, whatever you're going to do. You need to think about not only how am I going to provision them and what settings do I need as I provision, but who is accountable for maintaining this content? How am I going to manage the life cycle of this content going forward? That will drive the success of your intranet today, tomorrow, and far into the future. Can't stress enough the importance of good governance. And as we get new capabilities, we get new things we have to govern. For example, you may not be aware that any site owner of a modern site in SharePoint can make their own theme and decorate their site using any colors that they would choose, even if they are not aligned with your corporate brand. That's a decision that you absolutely cannot control. All you can do is either provision sites with the theme that you prefer and then tell people you may have the superpower to change it, but don't. So you have to combine something you can control with something you can provide with education. And you need to explain why it's important to have a consistent brand so that people aren't going from site to site thinking that they are now leaving the enterprise and going someplace else. So patterns really help, but the minute you give someone site owner permissions, they now actually have some new superpowers that you need to think about, how am I going to govern that? Same thing applies with Copilot agents. If you have Copilot, every site gets an agent by default. Now you have to think about how to manage all these agents that might be created and who's sharing them and what are they doing? And should we have kind of an acceptable use guidance about what we should be doing with agents, how we should be using prompts, and most importantly, how we should be using Copilot outcomes in our work. Like, do we say to people, do you have to indicate this entire document was generated by Copilot? Or should you even do that? I don't know that I think you have to trust that people will do the right thing, but reminding them what your governance practice is a really good thing. Now, it's really, really hard to do that. And so I have been compiling for the last 24 years, since SharePoint was a baby, a collection of governance decisions. And I update this document all the time. Used to have a version for me and then a version I shared publicly. I've stopped doing that. You use the same exact version. You now can find the same exact version that I use in my consulting practice. And what I've developed is an approach for getting the answers to the key governance decisions. Who should be in the room? You need to combine, by the way, business people with security people, with IT people, with intranet product owner people. And for some of these decisions, I want HR and legal in the room so that you can ask the right questions with the right audience and make really effective decisions. And so I've got this framework, and my guidance to you is whatever you do, don't make a governance document, because I promise you, no one will read it. You know, those giant governance documents that are better as doorstops than they are at effective outcomes. I think if you're going to do anything, you make a site that you combine with training so that you're basically messaging to your users, here's how you do it, here's how you could do it, but here's how the best way to get that outcome given our guidance. And so instead of just telling people how to, you should tell them how should. And Microsoft has great how-to content. And what you want to do is wrap your how should with Microsoft's how-to, because you'll never be able to keep up with the screenshots and the videos. Let Microsoft take care of that. They do a great job. You need to wrap that in your guidance, even with things as simple as uploading a file. If you just tell someone how to upload a file, you're missing an opportunity to teach them about file naming practices. Things like, never using .v1, .v2, .final, .really final, .this time I mean it. That's just going to create, a disease called versionitis that's rampant in every organization. And when you're publishing content, you don't want version IDs in the file name, so that when you update it, you can use SharePoint versioning to deprecate the old and apply the new. And so you want to, so before you tell someone how to upload something, you want to make sure that it's named appropriately, especially on the intranet, and also that they're the people who should be uploading it at all. Is it your file? Are you agreeing to maintain it for its life cycle? If not, get the owner to upload it so they'll keep it up to date and you link to it. So those kind of practices are better consumed, I think, as pages that you deliver in the moment. So you build the resource center. And the second link that I have will tell you how to build it in less than an hour, give you all the metadata. You can just cut and paste it and drop it into a choice column. And then all you have to do is create the pages. But I've given you in that deck some sample pages, including one on file naming that you can just deploy in your site. Third thing to think about is that the future is not really about more content onto your internet. It's actually about less and more personal content. And I think you want to think about, how am I going to make sure that I get the right information to you, content that is relevant to you in the moment. So it's not really about quantity, it's about quality of content. And the way that we deliver quality content in Microsoft 365 is to use audience targeting. Think about who might need this information and make sure that you are targeting your content to the right audiences. And this is kind of how we do personalization in Microsoft 365. So audience targeting lets you segment and target content, and you need to understand what can be an audience and then teach content creators how to apply those audiences. And the key to an audience is an intra-ID group. Those are the things formerly known as Azure AD or AD groups. Microsoft likes to rename things. It was so much easier to say AD or AAD groups. Now you got to like really say the word carefully, intra or entra. I've heard it pronounced multiple ways. Bottom line is you get one of these with every Microsoft team or every Viva Engage community, but you may want to create them dynamically based on a property in the profile, such as people who work in the New York office or people who work in the state of California or the province of British Columbia. So you really want to think about where might we want to have audiences, make sure that they're created based on an accurate property in the profile, and then you can use them in a variety of places. And this is really about educating people, A, what audiences exist for your use, and B, where you can apply them. And one little trick that I've learned the hard way and from really, really smart clients is that having a naming convention for the audiences that you want to use in your intranet are really helpful. So I have a client that manufactures train equipment, and they call their intranet very cleverly the depot. And all of the audiences set up for content on the intranet start with the word depot. And so when I'm looking for the audiences to target my web part, my content in a web part, a page, or a file, I just start looking for depot dash, and then I can see depot dash UK, people who work in the UK. And so I can see all of the specifically created audiences for intranet content. So naming convention for audiences help communicate what those audiences are and who's in them in the resource center. And then these are all the places you can use them. Another way to personalize the intranet is to use the new brand center to create organizational themes and fonts that make the intranet look like your organization. So today, fonts are available and themes are kind of one color plus an accent color. But really, really soon, you're going to be able to have multicolor themes, and you can make them as absolutely ugly as you want. And so I think that it's a really good idea to align theme creation with the people who know how to do it, your brand team or your marketing team. And what's really great about the Brand Center is it's an app that you deploy to a site that you can name Brand Center, Brand Guide, Brand Kit. You make the marketing team people the owners of that site, and they can create a theme, an collection actually of organizational themes that you then can deploy to every site, and you do not have to go through IT to run a PowerShell script, which was how we used to have to do this in order to try out new themes and apply the brand. So a really great app, and it turns the responsibility for look and feel to the team in the organization that really wants ownership of that. And then one other thing I think we should do to personalize our intranet content is to treat search like an actual work stream in our intranet deployment and use the native search customization tools like bookmarks and acronyms to make sure that when I search for a term, that the content that is most accurate or the place where you want me to go is what shows up first. So a little search engine optimization, and you can target different links to different groups of people. Oh, I mean different audiences, the same ones we have been using to target content, so that when you search for benefits and you're part of the UK team, you see UK benefits. When you search for benefits and you're in the US, you see US benefits. So really cool things that we can do native to the tool, really easy to create, and it allows us to, again, optimize the experiences for our users while we're cleaning up our content and shoring up our governance plan. So you do this simultaneously with having all the governance conversations, cleaning up your content, and getting things ready for these brand new experiences.
Yeah, bookmarks are a great. I mean, I used to love promoted results and best bet previously. It's interesting, so how little fanfare or love search gets now in this AI age, but I totally agree with you. Even something as simple as putting in an acronym and having a bookmark that explains what that acronym is can be life-changing for people from an intranet perspective.
And again, don't expect people to always use Copilot to find content. They might, but search is still there. And we are in this transition period. I have had people tell me that they've stopped using search and they're only using Copilot, and that's because they don't trust the search outcomes. And I'm like, well, if you don't trust search, why are you trusting the Copilot outcomes? It's based on the same content. If search is not returning accurate content, I promise you Copilot isn't either. And so again, that's way back. That's a governance thing, and we should really be sort of shoring up our governance foundation. So another part of the foundation really is like evaluating the structure. And I think this is really important, thinking about the structure of our content. Number one, because the modern world is flat. That means we don't have the S word, subsites. We don't even use that word. So I've banned requirements and I've banned subsites. So we don't use either of those terms in a modern intranet. The world is flat. And that means we have lots of sites, and those sites need to be permissioned correctly. They need to be governed correctly. But the beauty of having more sites is that we can assign content management responsibilities to a unique group of people. And we are not saying, hey, team, you got to manage all the content. We say, finance, you got to manage your content. You're the ones who knows when it's current or not. You keep it up to date. So everybody we can divide the world up. Everyone's responsible for their own content. With a few exceptions, we do want to make sure that there are some centralized locations for content. So here are just a few ideas that I think can sort of optimize your flat structure. I am a huge fan of centralizing policies because that is an area that is so critical to so many organizations. And by putting all your policies in a policy center with distributed permissions, perhaps, it allows you to manage policies holistically. And if you're regulated, it allows you to provide content to your auditors in an easy way, and it also makes sure that that critical content can get a grounded agent that sits on top of it. So if you have a policy center, you can build you get actually right up out of the box, a policy center agent, because every single site comes with an agent grounded in that content. No coding required. So I promise you, if I can create an agent, anyone can. And you can talk to the agent and tell it how you want it to respond and what you want it to do when it doesn't have an answer. And so the policy center could have an agent that basically says, only look at the content in this container. And if you don't find an answer, tell people to reach out to HR or reach out to their manager or something, so that you can basically use the agent to ensure that the answers people get are accurate. So bunch of licensing stuff. I'll let you guys see this in the slides, but so many opportunities for SharePoint agents. They're easy, they're out of the box, every site gets one, and soon you'll be able to take those SharePoint agents and extend them with Copilot Studio, so you can sort of have this pretty much no code view of an agent, and then an advanced agent that connects your SharePoint content to other content, all grounded in your SharePoint site. So really important to think about. The other thing I think you want to think about is that you can only have right now 20 sources to ground a SharePoint agent. So structure is really important because 20 sources could be 20 folders or 20 libraries or 10 libraries plus 10 folders or 10 sites plus 10 libraries on different sites, or one hub, which counts as one source and grounds the content in all of that. But you have one hub plus another hub or one hub plus another site up until you get to 20. So structure is really important for our agents. And so there are all kinds of options for creating them. And you can read about that on your own. But I think it's, again, our traditional way of thinking about content is really helping us also think about the future. And so,
and then if you're looking at build, it was basically all AI agent stuff, and there's a bunch of other things that are coming for AI agents in particular, which we might want to look at. Just a bit of a question here, so just to jump in here, from Georgina. Could you use an agent to navigate a knowledge library?
I don't know what you mean by a knowledge library.
I assume it's a library of content and files, but
so
perfect
again,
use case.
The answer is yes, of course, because you can ground an agent in a single library, and that will restrict the content to just what is in that library. So the answer is yes. And guess what? If you ground it on a site, it will look at the content all the content on your site. Although, as Joseph points out, it can look at pages, the text on a page, not quite great at images, but not yet metadata, like content types or columns or lists. But that is absolutely coming. For example, you couldn't ground an agent by saying SP content type : policy. So it's not really recognizing that as a content type, or the metadata within a policy, which is why the container should contain just policies, and you'll be able to get an agent. And you'll be able to ground an agent that way. So a knowledge library, 1000%. If that library is pages, yep, totally works for that as well. Okay. So while we still have our traditional intranets, we have to assume that people will consume our intranet in one of two ways. People who know that the content exists are going to start with search. Absolutely. And I've got data to show that. Or if they have no clue if the content exists, they will now start with search. However, your new people are going to want to see, what do we have? And so new hires tend to need navigation, and organizations that don't trust search will still want your navigation to work. And the key to navigation is making sure that the labels that you use align with what people call those things, and that we are not just delivering the org chart. Because honestly, what's probably going to change by the end of this webinar is the org chart in your organization. And so rather than delivering the org chart in navigation, think about the tasks that people need to perform and try to think how we can, in our navigation, align with the activities, actions, and tasks that people want to accomplish. And that doesn't mean you're going to ignore the org chart, because honestly, if you don't have something that shows the organization, someone's going to be upset. And so we don't need anyone crying over navigation. But we really want to think about, who are we building navigation for? People who need to get work done, or people who are producing content? And it's really a little bit of both. So here are some ideas for how you might want to organize your content. This isn't things I made up. One of my side hustle projects has been judging like an intranet beauty pageant, the Step 2 Digital Workplace Awards, for the last 10 years. And I have collected navigation from our awards plus the Nielsen Norman Awards. And I promise you, these are the patterns that the award-winning intranets tend to follow. But even though this is actually what I do for a living, I never get it right the first time. So when you're planning navigation, go test it. Use an online tool. There's plenty of them. And I promise you that you will get really insightful answers by testing your navigation, just making sure that it resonates with your users. It's interesting. Sherry says the landing example of the global navigation in the SharePoint cookbook is her inspiration. I'll be honest with you. I think I don't like that navigation at all. I do not think that, I think there's an information architecture hole in most of the template sites from Microsoft, but you should really start with, I think, start with thinking about this, not necessarily what you see in the Microsoft sites, but those Microsoft sites in what used to be the lookbook are actually incredibly useful for inspiration, art of the possible, not what you should do, but what you might be able to do. I don't like to deploy them ever, because I think there's a fatal flaw in each one of them, but I use them as examples all the time. So we want to do some testing, and there's some nice documentation. I wrote it, most of it, so I'm kind of impressed. I kind of believe in it, but I am an information architect. This is what I do. And so I did try to write down a lot of sort of how to think about planning navigation in this documentation that I did with Microsoft. The other thing you want to think about is, once you get people to your content, now you want to make it really beautiful. And we've all been waiting for flexible sections. And this is a gift that should be in almost all of your tenants now. And all I can say is be careful what you wish for. It's fiddly, it's hard to align, and it works best with text and images. Intranets often have dynamic web parts, which don't work as well in the structure of a flexible section. When you're using flexible sections, it is on you to plan how content responds on a mobile device. So everything is taken care of for you with a structured column, but it's all on you with flexible sections. So if you're going to use them, and I'm definitely using them, you have to fiddle around with where things look, where things align, and how you group content so it will work on a mobile device. So as I said, be careful what you wish for. It's really great, but have some guidance for your users. Microsoft has some templates for how to for like sort of section templates for flexible sections. None of them are going to align to your brand. So start thinking about how you're going to tell people, hey, use the template for layout, but then choose one of our brand aligned images in our organization assets library to make sure that you're staying on brand when you're creating these really what can be absolutely beautiful pages. And sometime in what I call the Microsoft-ish timeframe, so the Message Center and the roadmap says June-ish, we're going to get 50 new page templates to help inspire you to create different ways of storytelling on pages. And so these are coming soon. Unfortunately, I was praying that these would also allow us to have enterprise page templates. They don't. You still have page templates are at the site level.
Oh, they're still at the site level. You can't push them
Nope.
out.
Nope. Although Microsoft promised this like 8 years ago when they first announced templates. But the good news is that according to this UX, if this is what it lands as, my templates, my custom templates on my site will show up before the Microsoft ones and not behind a tab, which is terrible UX because they were really hard to see unless you set one of your own as a default. So all kinds of beautiful templates. You can start with these and save them as your own. But what I really want is for me to be able to have the same ability that Microsoft does, which is enterprise templates. I would put them in the brand center where all the other brand kind of things live. But we don't have that yet, which is why your provisioning tool is so important. It's because you can provision a site with templates per site.
Quick question here. So for any intranet, any useful org chart functionality yet? I put down a thing saying that the people skills people skills agent is coming, but anything else that you can recommend?
I mean, the org chart web part, if you're AI, if you're AD, if your Entra ID, not Active Directory, is accurate, it is going to be relatively okay. And there are some third-party tools that can help you with that too. What it isn't, however, is an employee directory. And so every intranet needs one of those. And yet I don't understand why we don't have an app from Microsoft for that. We have a people card in the Viva Connections dashboard, but again, that's not really an employee directory. So most of my clients are deploying third-party tools to get that outcome. Lots of cool ways to make your pages look good. Oh my God, I'm crazy about the editorial card. I think that is really the most flexible and useful web part that Microsoft has released in 2025. I have replaced all call to action web parts and almost all image links with the editorial card because it's just really pretty and I really like how it works. And so if you haven't tried it yet, really encourage you to try it. One thing that I haven't loved about agents is that in order to get an agent visible on your SharePoint site, you can go grab the file and then add it to a button or a quick links web part. Coming in what I'll call the Microsoft July-ish timeframe is an agent web part that you can add on your page. And so I think that will be really cool for bringing Copilot onto a page instead of in the sidecar of a page. We can use AI, and by the way, this does not require any Copilot licensing, to take any section that has text and images and get some ideas for how it might look. Hasn't been super helpful to me, but I know there's a lot of people that like it. If you have Copilot licenses, we can use Copilot to generate content from files about topics. And again, this is a great way to get started. Not sure you're going to leave it as the end state, but oh my God, I cannot tell you how many pages I've created from a PDF. Could you turn this PDF into a page? This is actually a really helpful way to get started from existing content. And then of course, Copilot will help you rewrite your content. Most important thing on an intranet is not more is more, it's less is more. So use Copilot to get you to shorten your content. It's not more content that we want on the internet. It's less content, but more relevant content. And if we can kill a lot of pages by getting some rewrite help from Copilot, I think it'll be super helpful. And then just one more thing. Microsoft now has a built-in accessibility checker. You should use it every time you create a page. End of story. It's the little guy. You see this little figure, and it will tell you where you're missing alt text on images. And I'm really passionate about this. I could spend all my time telling you that you really need to do this, showing you why you should do it, but trust me, it's really important. Okay. Only 2 more to go, and I want to make sure that we can answer questions at the end as well. But turns out there are a lot of different ways to communicate in Microsoft 365. I mean, we have SharePoint, we have Teams, we have Viva Engage, and oh my gosh, we got Outlook as well, and it's not dead despite rumors to the contrary. And so we need, as an organization, to think about how can our intranet align with our enterprise communication strategy? And if you haven't thought about that and your engagement strategy, this would be a really good time to do it. And so SharePoint allows you to create pixel perfect pages with both static and dynamic content. New feature coming to Pages is the amount of time it takes to read on a news post. So it will help people understand their commitment when they look at news. But if we're writing a news post, we should have a template that guides people not just to structure, but how to write a great news article. Things like keeping the number of words to 300 to 500 words. Summary at the top. So the most important information is at the top, all the way down, funneling down to the least important information. So exactly the opposite from the way that you've been taught to write. Because the bottom line is people don't read on the web. They skim and they scan. And we got to make sure that if you want people to consume your news, it's short and relevant, and the summary is the first thing people read, just like a typical newspaper article. But not only can you distribute news with SharePoint and SharePoint news articles, but Viva Engage is an incredible way to reach your audience with, again, news and event information. And what makes Viva Engage different, what gives it a superpower, is it's really about two-way dialogue, where SharePoint is really about sending content to people and not so much about dialogue. SharePoint comments are not really engagement. So can you do all this with SharePoint News? But this two-way dialogue makes Viva Engage really special when it comes to enterprise communications. So what does that mean? It means you need to think about a strategy. And there's a lot of overlap among these tools, and they're getting closer and closer. But which tool to use when is very much an organizational decision. And so that's something that you really should be thinking about as you're transforming your intranet for the future. And so if you have a premium license for Engage, it's called the Viva CNC Communities and Collaboration, Communities and Communications license, you can get access to Amplify, which is really communications orchestration. Write once, publish to SharePoint, publish to Viva Engage, publish to Teams, send directly to Outlook. What's coming for Amplify is the ability to not have to go to Amplify to, I'm going to use the verb now, amplify your news post. So from SharePoint, literally from SharePoint with the right permissions and the right license, you can send that page to Engage, send that page to another SharePoint site, which is actually going to create a copy of that page in the destination site, and send that page now to Engage as well. So you can orchestrate communications from one site and route it to other sites. And what's important about Amplify is richer analytics on the impact of your post. Where are people reading it? How much time are they spending on the page? Are they looking at it more in Outlook? Or are they actually looking at it in SharePoint or Viva Engage? So really important. But again, content is way more important than the channel. And so you still want to use all the tools and training and everything available to you to create better content, because that's what's going to get people interested. Take a breath. finally, the last thing I want you to think about is, when your intranet is a destination, it's an additional thing people have to go to. And my favorite application in the Viva suite is Connections, because that is what allows you to bring your intranet into the flow of work. And if people are already working in Teams, why make them leave Teams to find intranet content? And the Connections app is free, meaning it's part of your E3 or E5 licenses, and so and the F licenses as well. So you can bring the intranet into Teams in the mobile app and in the desktop app as well. And one of the other sort of key features of Connections is the ability to bring applications into the flow of work. Now, there's nothing new about having an app in your intranet. These little microservice things, we've been doing that for 30 years. Every initial intranet platform, back when I was doing this in the way back, had the ability to integrate line of business systems. But what Microsoft has done is given us a framework for integrating with line of business systems and all the other applications in the Microsoft ecosystem and bringing them to you as little mini apps within SharePoint. And so my favorite one actually is the People Search card. It's incredibly rich and really cool. But my clients really love the Quick Links card because it allows you to deliver up to 20 personalized links for different audiences. And this card has one more superpower, and that is it allows anyone in the organization to get personal links. So if you've been using SharePoint since like the 2010 days, where we had the ability to have My Links, part of the My Site, well, this is coming back as the Quick Links card in Viva Connections. And if you go to Viva Connections, you will, and the organization hasn't turned it off, you'll see the Customize button, and then you can add your own Quick Links card. You can give it whatever image you want it to have, and you can add up to 20 links just for you. The organization can also add the Quick Links card and target those links to different audiences. So I have a law firm that I was talking to this morning, and they're going to have a Quick Links card targeted to lawyers, and then another Quick Links card targeted to non-attorneys with different apps, because people do use different things.
Okay, so we've got about 1 more minute left.
Oh, yep. No. Yeah, and I'm really done, because the last thing I want you to think about is that you're never done either. You want to plan for change. This is just a start. Your makeover is ongoing. Here's kind of a summary of our 7 steps. And Michael, that's really it for me.
Awesome. Amazing. I know we make these 45 minutes. They always go over. Anyone have any other questions for Sue before we run off here? Sue, this is a good one. Any helpful links on how to get brand themes in Amplify?
That's a really good question. Brand themes in Amplify. If you're creating brand theme, you know what? If your intranet has themes and you create a page in Amplify, that theme is inherited by the page when it's published to a site. So whatever the theme is for the site will be what that page uses in Amplify. So I'm not sure if that was really what you're asking, but any page that you publish to a site can only have the theme that is already on the site, and Amplify will respect that. Amplify itself isn't pushing a theme into a site.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay, everyone. We're out of time. Sue, thank you so much. We appreciate your time as well. Appreciate all of the questions from everyone. Just so everyone knows, we will send over the recording. And Sue, are you okay if we send over a PDF of some of the slides as well?
Sure.
Amazing. We will do that. As always, we have more webinars in the works. I think our next one is on the 29th with Joanne Klein, all about, what is it, DSPM for AI or something along those lines. But again, another wonderful webinar coming up. Susan, thank you again so much. It was a pleasure. And for everyone, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.